Welcome to GP Now in Focus. This is an opportunity for us to share with you information that is of interest to the community. Today we're going to be talking about the water treatment plant. And with me today I have Jason Canady. Jason, welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about yourself first. Who you are, how long you've been with the city, what your position is.
So I am the Public Works Director for the City of Grants Pass. I have been with the city now for very close to 30 years. It's been a great place to live and work. I started as an entry-level employee at the water restoration plant, hosing algae and stuff down the tanks. I spent the next 20 plus years at the water filtration plant, so it's very near and dear to my heart. So it's really excited to be here to talk about it today.
Excellent. So we've been talking about the water treatment plant for quite some time, and actually we've got quite a historical water treatment plant, and that's one of the reasons why we're having that discussion. The city is talking about the construction of a brand new water treatment plant, and we've been talking about this for about how long?
Really since 2014. The water treatment plant was originally constructed in 1931. It is the oldest continually operated water treatment plant in the state of Oregon. That is an impressive record. However, that also leads to very significant deficiencies in how the materials were put together, how the building is holding up, and there are some structural issues that really just cannot be repaired.
So I mentioned new water treatment plant. Did we look at refurbishing the current plant, and what did that look like?
We did. We looked at multiple options that included everything from rebuilding the entire plant in its current location, from just trying to structurally reinforce the existing plant, to building a new treatment plant at a new location. So every option that was conceivable was examined.
Why do we need the new water treatment plant? Is it a capacity issue, or is it a structural issue with the current site?
That really is a great question. The current water treatment plant has plenty of capacity to last us many years into the future. However, we have a building that is falling apart. The walls were just not constructed strong enough. They were constructed now 90 years ago. The water that's been migrating through the walls is causing deterioration, and there's certain parts of the plant that really are in jeopardy of collapse.
So the walls are deteriorating. What kind of things have we been doing right now to try and keep the plant running? And it's just sounds like it's getting to a point where those things aren't working very well anymore.
They aren't. We do several things. Several times a year we will bring in a contractor who will apply a food grade epoxy resin to many of the cracks that are located throughout the building. We also do very frequent inspections of areas of the plant that are hard to access to monitor the structural strength of the building.
So talking about the structural strength of the building, we also have, how about the concrete walls, especially the outside of some of those walls? What are we looking at?
Yeah, that is great. We have some great footage that shows our primary basin number one. That was the original basin constructed in the 1930s. As you can see from the top of the wall, it's very thin. The wall has a very severe bow, which, as many of us know, concrete is not designed to bend. It is a rigid material. And what that's showing us is it's been applying pressure so long that the concrete is deflecting and the water is causing continual degradation, making that worse. Okay,
so definitely it's not a capacity issue. It is actually the condition of the current plant that is really at jeopardy, both from a seismic and just an operational perspective. So you mentioned that the recommendation was to move forward with a new water treatment plant. So understanding staff has been doing a lot for a number of years to try and keep this plant running and operational, providing good, clean water. What got us to the point? Did we do a study? Did we get community input? What was it that got us to a point where council was able to make an informed decision on what to do, whether it be rebuild or construct a new plant?
Yes, all of the above. This really is a very complex issue. There was an extensive study done in 2014 by Montgomery Watson Harza, looking at all of our different options. We then formed a citizen advisory committee, which was comprised of council members, business leaders, developers, tourism advocates, you name it. We got a representative to be on that committee. We presented them with all of the options for reconstruction, strengthening, building a new location. Their recommendation to the city council, who ultimately upheld that recommendation, was to construct a new treatment plant at a new location, as it posed the greatest benefit with the least amount of risk to the community.
Okay, so we had consultants on board, we had a good group of citizens that all made a recommendation that it really is a new plant at a new location.
It is.
So that really brings us to sort of where we are today with some of the questions that we've been receiving from the public and where we're at currently in the process of acquiring a new piece of property. So some of the things I've asked is when you're talking about a new site, where can that new site go? Can we put it anywhere, or does it need to be in a specific place, and why?
You can put it anywhere. However, the farther away you get from the Rogue River, the more expensive that project becomes. We looked at a number of sites, all the way from the far east, all the way up against Tom Pierce Park and the Spalding Industrial Area, to way far north up towards the north end of town. And the farther away we got, the project costs escalated dramatically. We really want to stay within about a quarter-mile radius of the existing intake structure to provide the most value to the community.
So some of the questions then, thinking about that quarter-mile radius, and I'm guessing that has to do also with the infrastructure that we don't see, that's under the ground, and the importance of that, plus the water intake system?
It is. That's a very key point. One of the things that you think about with a water plant is that there's pipes underground. What most people don't think about is those pipes are very much like your circulatory system, where the pipes that are closest to the water plant themselves are bigger. And they have to be, and then as you get farther out, it becomes like the capillaries at the end of your fingers, where they're smaller and smaller because they have to deliver less material. The water plant's no different. And so if we put the water plant at the very far edge of the system, we don't have a connection to the system that will allow us to deliver the quantity of water we need back to the center of town. So we have to run very large diameter piping all the way out to the water plant and then all the way back, which doubles the cost of the project.
Well, that makes sense. That's why you need to look at that small radius where our current plant is located, the footprint of our current plant. So let me ask you a couple of questions, some things that I've heard from the community also. So what about Baker Park? That's just right across the river, and it's close to the river. What about that spot?
It was looked at. Most of it is actually in the floodway, and some of it is in the floodplain. So we don't want to build our water plant where it is in jeopardy of being wiped out by a flood. We really have to be in a secure location.
So when we looked at this with help with the consultants and council and staff, and we were looking at that area, that there was a number of businesses, residential areas, but also there's a place right across the street. It's our skate park. Was that ever considered?
It was. In fact, that was one of the original sites that the Citizen Advisory Committee recommended that we looked at. They brought that option forward for us to evaluate. It was evaluated very closely. It was deemed that it probably wasn't the best location. That pond has been there for as long as anybody can remember. It is fed by a spring, which means that there's a lot of natural groundwater in that area. While technically feasible, constructing in an area with that much water right next to the creek presents some problems that we probably don't want to face long term. We want to build this water plant to last the community for the next 100 years, and that really is going to be a challenge. So you want to pick a site that offers the best location with the best opportunities.
Recognizing that the city property was not actually a viable option where the skate park is, did we start to go like basically door to door and start looking around, and what did that look like and how'd that go?
We didn't go door to door. However, we did get out the map and we started looking at individual properties and groups of properties that would be suitable and large enough to put the water treatment plant on. That identified probably about 5 groups of properties that we were able to look at. Multiple owners were approached. Several told us no thank you, and we moved on to another property. One told us yes, they were interested. Others were groups of residential properties, which makes a sale very complex. Because you're dealing with multiple property owners and eliminating housing, we thought that those probably weren't the best option for the community, and focused instead on properties that appeared to be underutilized commercial property. We even eliminated several industrial properties that were a series of multiple owners for the same reason as the residential, that a sale that involved multiple property owners was a far more complex property deal than a single owner.
That's why one of the questions we've heard is the residential area to the west of the skate park was not considered because multiple property owners. My understanding it'd be more like 12 residential plus a couple commercial and the closure of a street.
That is absolutely correct. It would probably take 2 commercial and 12 residential to have enough property to construct the water treatment plant on the west side of Skunk Creek. And that's a lot of housing that you would be eliminating from the Grants Pass inventory.
Considering the sites that are close to proximity to the current plant, we're relatively limited to some degree on the amount. There's probably half a dozen or so that really would fit the bill because you need a certain amount of acreage, I would imagine, to place this plant.
There were very few sites that were appropriate, and as we talked about, we had approached several property owners and were told no. We did kind of settle on the J Street property because of its proximity to both the Rogue River and to our existing distribution system. That made it ideal for putting the water treatment plant and making an easy connection to the system. And at the time, we had a very willing property owner who was in negotiations with us.
So in the beginning, they were open to negotiating with the city and we started to negotiate. Were we looking at a certain part of that property? My understanding is where the landscaping, Copeland sand and gravel operation is, there's a west portion and there's an east portion. What were we looking at? Were we looking at the whole property, a portion of the property, or a combination of all of the above?
That is a great question. When we initially approached the J Street owners, we were only inquiring about the eastern portion. There were a lot of unknowns at that time, but we thought we could make that work. They put out the idea that we just purchased the whole property and we started going down that route. We have since modified that and we're now looking at a modified eastern portion because there's a couple of constraints on the back piece, such as a high pressure gas line, which prohibits us from utilizing that entire portion of the property. What it's going to force us to do is relocate the plant within that structure. So we have kind of asked for a modified property line, which takes a little bit more. So instead of being 8 acres, it's 10 acres, the back 2 parcels. But with that, the front portion can stay in operation, which has all of their business functions, the landscape business, their RPM diesel or their rental businesses, and some trailers.
In negotiations with the J Street property owner, how do we determine what to offer? Is there a fair market value that?
That's a great question. So in this case, an appraisal was obtained, and an appraisal is a legal document that is developed under very strict legal guidance. They have rules over how they can value those properties. In this case, they determined that the property was worth $2.5 million, and that was offered to the J Street property owners.
The $2.5 million, that brings up a good question. I've heard and been asked, why not just give them $10 million?
At some point, we can't overpay for the property. That would be being a very bad steward of the city's dollars. One of the things that we take very seriously as staff is that we're entrusted to spend the public's money wisely. And paying $10 million for a piece of property that's only valued at $2.5 million really isn't a good use of public funds.
We've discussed the need of a water treatment plant, where that new water treatment plant ultimately needs to go, that footprint, and the exploration of all the property owners within that footprint. Also, the negotiations with the current J Street property owner and how unfortunately negotiations have not been fruitful. When all of those options have been exhausted and the policy board, the city council, local government, still deems that property as essential for the greater good of the community, eminent domain is an authority that local government has. That is where the local government purchases from the private property owner the property at fair market value. And it utilizes the court system to help determine what that fair market value is. So eminent domain is a tool utilized by government to purchase private property that provides equity and fairness for both parties, both the public good, so they're not overpaying for a piece of property, and also for the private property owner, so they're getting fair market value for the purchase of that property. Eminent domain is something government does not take lightly. It's only utilized when it's for the greater good of the community. So is this project a greater good of the community project?
Yeah, this is a question I actually get asked by citizens fairly frequently. A plentiful supply of safe, pure drinking water really is the cornerstone of the community. Without it, the economy dies, people move away, you have nothing left to build on. It really is probably the single most important project the city will undertake for the next 100 years.
You mentioned how this fits with the greater good of the community. Moving forward, the impact, not only for the community in having a facility that is seismically stable, able to produce clean water for the future, even the steps to get to that being built will be an influx of revenue and jobs for the community, because this is an $80 million project.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing we're gonna have a lot of local contractors that are gonna be in the bidding process. Is that something that, when we moving forward, do we have the ability to sort of say, hey, you've got to use some local contractors on this kind of project? Or do they get to all be shipped in from some other state?
That's a great question. Almost all of the contractor teams that we have heard from, and there is about 4 that are able to do this nationwide that are interested in working in the Pacific Northwest, all of them have a local contractor engagement portion written within their contracts. They are out there already meeting with the local groups, trying to find out what the local building community can do to help them, because using that local help is beneficial not only to the contractors, but the local economy. Those dollars that get spent here circulate far more times than if they get sent back to the Portland or the Seattle area. And all of them recognize that, and all of them want to engage the local community.
Is this a project that is a 12-month project? How long is this?
Oh, if only it was a 12-month project. No, this will be a 5-year endeavor. Once we finally get started, we will be probably 5 years from the start of the design to when we're able to flip the switch and actually run water out to the community.
Wow. So the impact to the local economy is going to be actually quite a bit from a dollar perspective, but also lengthy.
Very lengthy. We're really excited to get it started. It is probably, as we said, the most important project that the city's undertaken. Once that project gets rolling, you're going to see activity day to day, and you're going to see an influx of money into the community.
Wow. Jason, I really want to thank you for being here today, answering these questions, providing that information. And I want to do a shout out. Please send and submit your questions to me if you have some, or give me a call. We'd love to be able to address those in a future GP Now in Focus episode. And thank you for tuning in.